The trial of Jonathan Majors has begun. Jonathan Majors, of course, plays Kang the Conqueror in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. He was introduced in Loki Season 1 as a Kang variant, He Who Remains, and then we got introduced to the full Kang in Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania. Jonathan Majors was arrested in Manhattan on March 25th after an alleged domestic dispute with his then-girlfriend at the time, Grace Jabbari. He was charged with assault and aggravated harassment, and a charge of strangulation has been dropped. However, if he is found guilty and convicted, he still faces up to a year in jail. The trial recently began, and we're going to go over everything that has happened so far, including the testimony of the alleged victim, Grace Jabbari, and the testimony of 4 other people, one of which was the driver of the car in which Majors and Jabbari got in the fight in. We'll go over everything in great detail in this video. Before opening statements begin, a jury was selected on November 29th and November 30th. It consists of 6 jurors comprised of 3 men and 3 women, as well as 2 alternatives. Then on Monday, December 4th, the opening statements began. Prosecutor Michael Perez began by offering details on the events that led to Majors' arrest. On March 25th, Majors and Jabbari took a private car service after midnight from a Brooklyn party to their Chelsea apartment. The prosecutor said the couple, who met in 2021 on the set of Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania, had been together for 2 years and had discussed marriage and kids. This was a serious relationship, Perez told jurors. On the night of the incident, Jabbari saw a text message on Majors' phone from a woman named Cleopatra that read, "Wish I was kissing you right now." Jabbari allegedly took the phone out of his hands to see who sent the message. Perez asserted that Majors then began grabbing the right side of Jabbari's body and prying her finger off the phone to retrieve it. The prosecutor said this caused bruising, swelling, and substantial pain. He intended to cause Grace Jabbari physical injury, and in fact, he did cause her physical injury, Perez asserted. What's interesting is that Majors does not deny that a text message from another woman sparked the alleged altercation. However, Majors' side, his criminal defense lawyer Priya Chaudhry, alleges that it was Jabbari who assaulted Majors, which is what they have been claiming this entire time, that Jonathan Majors is actually the victim in this altercation and this entire case. And they state that Majors was assaulted and Priya Chaudhry ripped 2 buttons off of his coat and tore his pocket with her bare hands, and not the other way around. She assaulted him, he did not assault her. This was a statement made by Majors' team. After the altercation in the car took place, both of them left and parted ways. After they parted ways, Jabbari ran into 3 strangers on the street who invited her to go to a club. She went to supposedly block out the experience. That's what Perez told the jurors. Meanwhile, Jonathan Majors checked into a hotel room and ended their relationship through a text message. After the nightclub, Jabbari would return to Majors' apartment and called him multiple times, 32 times according to Priya Chaudhry. She then took 2 sleeping pills, went to sleep, and when Jonathan Majors got back to the apartment, he found Jabbari on the floor of his closet. When Jonathan Majors found her, he was the one who actually called the police, and according to Chaudhry, he called the police out of concern for Jabbari's mental state because she was unconscious, and in her text messages to him, she had threatened suicide. When Jabbari woke up, they say that she was hesitant, but eventually told officers that she had sustained injuries from Majors, who was then subsequently arrested. But what's important to know about this particular court date was that they did mention that Jabbari herself, the alleged victim, was arrested on October 26th and charged with assault and criminal mischief in connection to the March incident. But the Manhattan District Attorney's Office declined to prosecute the case against Grace Jabbari because it lacked prosecutorial merit. However, the judge, Michael Gaffey, ruled on Thursday the defense can bring up Jabbari's arrest during the trial. This court session ended with Jabbari's lawyer Perez stating that before this incident occurred, the honeymoon period of Majors and Jabbari's partnership was waning and things had begun to sour. He states that months into the relationship, the defendant's true self began to show and he began to snap at, manipulate, and strategically withhold affection from Jabbari, and that he had threatened suicide to her to control her actions in the past. Then Majors' team testified, and they argued that this was about the end of a relationship, not about a crime, and it had nothing to do with what happened in the car. The defense argued that Majors' Hollywood career had been on the rise before the arrest. He was an Emmy nominee and was in the indie film Magazine Dreams, and of course was in Creed 3 and Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania. Chaudhry stated, and I quote, "Mr. Majors' lifetime of hard work was coming coming to fruition, and his career seemed unstoppable until he ended his relationship with Jabbari and she made these false allegations. This is a man who spent 30 years working hard to get where he was on March 25th, a man with the world at his fingertips, end quote. And she concluded the opening statement by stating, "This is a case about the end of a relationship, not about a crime, at least not one that Mr. Majors committed. In revenge, she made these false allegations to ruin Mr. Majors and take away everything he spent his life working for." And she urged the jury, and I quote, "End this nightmare for him," end quote. Then on Tuesday, December 5th, the alleged victim, Grace Jabbari, testified. She testified that during their 2 years together, Majors could become volatile and controlling, and he would threaten suicide after fights. And she said that during the altercation in March, Majors struck her head. They also played an audio recording during the trial, in which they heard Jonathan Majors say, "I'm a great man, a great man. I do great things for my culture and for my world. The woman that supports me needs to be a great woman." According to Jabbari, Majors demanded that she should behave like Michelle Obama or Coretta Scott King, the wives of Barack Obama and Martin Luther King Jr. Then the jury was shown a surveillance video of Majors getting out of the car and Jabbari following him. The video seemingly showed Majors pushing her back into the car. Jabbari testified that she went with the 3 strangers that she met on the street to the bar because she didn't want to be alone. She stated that on the night of the incident, the physical pain wasn't registering. She wasn't aware that there was pain in her body. She said, "I hadn't registered anything. I'm a dancer. I've danced with a broken rib. I was only thinking from my heart of the infidelity. That morning we were talking about when we were going to get married and the names of our children." She would continue to go on to state that he was really kind and loving in the beginning. "He told me he loved me very early on, which was overwhelming, but I loved it, and I loved him. He wrote me poetry. I felt very loved and cared for and seen." Then she said in December 2021, she was going to meet Majors' dogs, and she alleged that Majors berated her for bringing up a former boyfriend's pet. And she stated, and I quote, "It was the first time I felt scared of him. I knew to never mention my ex again or anyone I had dated before." She then relayed another incident in June of 2022. She attended the Glastonbury Festival in England with her friends, and she told Jonathan Majors that she wouldn't likely have cell service given the crowds. And when she didn't, she said that Majors got upset with her and sent her a ton of messages saying that she shouldn't be there and how dare she go. She said the exchange made her feel guilty, so she ended up leaving the festival. But when she tried to get in touch with Jonathan Majors and tried to see him, he wasn't talking to her and he didn't respond to her messages or calls. She then said that immediately after, though, it was quite nice again and he was apologetic and thanked her for her patience with him. She said that she told Majors that she'd never tell anybody about that side of the relationship. She said, "I felt like I had to keep a lot of secrets from everyone. I felt very isolated. It was confusing. I felt scared of him, but quite dependent on him." And she said that the relationship continued because she loved him. Jabbari said that after fights, Majors would refer to himself as a monster and make threats of suicide, and that she would plead with him that he couldn't do that. "Think about your daughter, think about your mother." And she would try to make him feel safe and secure, and he would receive that. But Jabbari said that this took a toll on their relationship and made her feel isolated, that she was just existing in his world, and she had low self-esteem and lost a lot of weight. They then returned to the courtroom the next day, Wednesday, December 6th, where she testified again, where she said that she didn't want to call the police on him because of a previous conversation that they had where he warned her about trusting the police because of what they would do to him as a black man. And keep in mind that it was actually Jonathan Majors who called the police, not Jabbari. She said she woke up to loads of officers and was hesitant, but eventually told the officers that she had sustained injuries from Majors. And to add a little bit of context to this, what Priya Chaudhry, Jonathan Majors' lawyer, has said is that there is evidence from the body cam of the police officers actually telling her to say that she was assaulted by him. This hasn't seemingly been brought up in court yet, but it is something that Priya Chaudhry has claimed in the past. Jabbari said that she felt like it was her fault and that she should have lied and said nothing happened so Jonathan Majors wouldn't be in trouble or upset with her, and that she wanted to fix it. She then testified that she asked for the charges to be dropped against Majors because she, and I quote, "didn't understand the context around." End quote. She then testified about the pain that she felt after the alleged assault. She said, "I couldn't lie on the right side of my body." Everywhere hurt. I'm used to muscle aches, pain inflicted in other ways as a dancer. This felt so uncomfortable. The jury was shown photos of Jabbari's swollen finger and a cut behind her ear that she took the day after the alleged assault. Then the defense argues that Jabbari fabricated these allegations to get back at Majors after their breakup, with Chaudhry stating again, "This is the case about the end of a relationship, not about a crime, at least not one that Majors committed, and that it was actually Jabbari who assaulted Majors." The audio was also brought up again, where Majors called himself a great man, and Chaudhry sought to give the jury some context to help explain why Majors was scolding Jabbari on the recording. And she asked Jabbari if her drinking habits had been a constant source of tension in the relationship, but Jabbari said he would get upset with me and use my drinking as an excuse. The trial then continued on Thursday, December 7th, where Jonathan Majors' attorney, Priya Chaudhry, got to cross-examine Grace Jabbari, asking her a bunch of questions. When it came down to her alleged injuries after the alleged assault, she had asked why she had gone out to a nightclub immediately after the alleged assault took place, suggesting that her injuries must not have been particularly serious, in which Jabbari said, "I was feeling pain, but I was choosing to ignore it. I was filled with adrenaline. The next morning is when the pain sunk in. When I woke up, I felt like I had been hit by a bus." The jury was shown footage of Jabbari at the nightclub, in which Chaudhry asked if Jabbari hit her head on the DJ booth, in which she responded, "I did not." The video also showed Jabbari touching her hair as she left the club, in which Chaudhry asked if Jabbari felt blood on her head, in which she replied, "I didn't touch behind my ear, so I didn't." They also showed surveillance footage of the street of Jonathan Majors and Grace Jabbari on the side of the street. Chaudhry questioned Jabbari about playing with and fluffing her hair despite the laceration behind her right ear and pain in her finger, in which Jabbari responded with, "I wasn't thinking about pain at this point, I was upset." The next day, on December 8th, Grace Jabbari ended her testimony, and then we heard from one of her friends and a police officer who was on the scene when Majors was arrested. Grace Jabbari's friend and colleague, Holly Blakely, was called as a witness, and she said that when she first met Jonathan Majors, he was very sweet and charming, and very loving, but she then noticed a change in Jabbari as the couple continued their relationship. She said that Jabbari would be in the house a lot more and seemed to have a lot less interest in herself. She was working a lot less. She used to have a lot of energy and was very self-driven, but she saw a lot of that disappear. She also testified that Grace Jabbari called her the morning after the alleged assault took place, and she sent her photos of the injury, in which Blakely said, "I'd never heard her like that before. Quite quiet, wrecked, in shock, like she'd been crying. In a way, it was an entirely different emotional landscape. It was different. She was very, very broken, a very traumatized person." Then the NYPD officer who responded to the 911 call and arrested Majors, Brendan Swain, testified. They also reviewed his personal body cam footage on the witness stand. Swain testified that he had noticed Jabbari's middle finger was bruised and that she had a cut behind her right ear that was 1.5 inches long. Swain then took Majors into another room to ask Jabbari privately what had happened to cause her injuries. He then said that Grace Jabbari whispered, saying that she didn't want him right outside the room, and he said that she seemed scared and started to cry. The trial then concluded yesterday, December 11th, Monday morning, where more witnesses took the stand, including 2 of the 3 strangers that Jabbari met on the street and went to the nightclub with, and the driver of the private car they were in. 2 of the 3 people that Jabbari met on the street, Chloe Zoller and Max Manning, testified that Jabbari was visibly upset, but didn't notice any injuries on her when they met her. Zoller then said that Jabbari complained about her finger hurting at the club, so he gave her some ice from a drink bucket on their table to apply to it. But here's where things get pretty interesting when Naveed Sawar, the driver of the car, testified. He said he'd been hired as Major's private driver for the day and have driven him and Jabbari to the Brooklyn Academy of Music and then to a restaurant for dinner. He said the couple seemed good earlier in the day until Jabbari noticed the text message on Major's phone in the evening. Sawar testified that Jabbari became angry and she and Major started arguing. He said, "I was feeling something going on in the back seat. When I reached Canal and Center Street, Majors wanted to get rid of Jabbari and he opened the door. I saw they were fighting when the car stopped. He was trying to get rid of her." Then the prosecution played video footage from security and traffic cameras that showed Majors and Jabbari's altercation, them leaving Sawar's car, and then Jabbari meeting the 3 people on the street. Then Sawar said, "I do remember Majors was pushing her back into the car, trying to get rid of her." He said, Jabbari was yelling at Majors and they were having an argument. I had a feeling Jabbari had hit Majors earlier, the way she was fighting and the sounds produced. And he added, he was not doing anything, she was doing it. He was trying to get rid of her. He was saying, leave me alone, I have to go. So from the driver's point of view, from what he heard and the way Jabbari was acting, he feels like it was Jabbari who was hitting Jonathan Majors and not the other way around, and that Jonathan Majors was trying to get rid of her, trying to get away. And this is everything that has happened so far in the trial of Jonathan Majors. Right now, the way this is going to go is very unclear. We've heard a lot of testimonies, one from Grace Jabbari herself, then others that the prosecution has called, but we haven't really heard anything from Majors' team yet, no witnesses that they've really called except for the driver, and Jonathan Majors himself hasn't testified yet if he is even going to do so. But a lot left still remains in this trial, so be sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell so you don't miss any of the latest news about it. Also, if you subscribe and leave a comment down below, you're automatically entered in our giveaway for a chance to win an Xbox Series X, a PS5, some Marvel Legends items, or some DC items. The winner picks one item, and we pick a winner at the end of each month. You can find us on Instagram and Twitter as well, and as always, thank you all so much for watching. Woof woof.